Our next panel is going to talk about housing the industry. I think you learned a lot today about how these companies, not only their products, but their operations differ from traditional life science companies that are spun out of academic institutions that are focused on therapeutics and diagnostics and other kind of medical technologies. And they require different environments to do their work in. They need different instrumentation and tools. They need different lab configurations. And so we have 4 of the building operators and owners here in Brooklyn that are housing these companies. Industry City, Biobat, New Lab, and SUNY Downstate. And so we're going to invite them up to talk a little bit about the facilities that they're offering, but also what they're offering to companies like this.
All right, well, hi everyone. I also was a speaker earlier, so I guess I'll give a quick introduction of myself and then have all of our panelists introduce themselves. I'm Susan Schofer. I'm a partner at SOSV, venture capital firm, as well as chief science officer for HAX. We, like I think all of you, have also been heavily investing in space to support companies in this ecosystem. So as I think we've talked about earlier, we have, through SOSV, a new space that's in 7 Penn Plaza with biotech space built out and really lots of co-working space, event space, as well as biology labs to support the teams that are within our programs. But you know, part of the purpose of having that and having that in such a central location is to really support the ecosystem. And in addition, for HAX in Newark, we're building out an even bigger space, a 40,000 square foot space with wet labs as well as workshops and co-working space. But anyway, I'll pass it down to our panel to give introductions to themselves. It's just exciting to be here, and I think we've heard a lot of inspiring elements of what this ecosystem is all about, so I'm excited to talk to you guys about the space and how we really support companies in this space.
So thank you, Sue, and thank you, Nancy, for inviting me. My name is Tom Hall. I'm the fairly new director of Biobat. Been there about 6 or 7 months. How many of you have been to Biobat? Anybody? I know you have, Sarah. Okay, that's good. What you see right there is a picture of our art space. I encourage anybody that hasn't been to our space or hasn't been to Biobat to come on over. I'd love to give you a tour. In particular, a new exhibit that just started up on water and all that good bioart stuff. Prior to joining Biobat, I started and ran an AgTech incubator down in North Carolina, pretty close to RTP and that whole group. So what you see there is this massive 2-building facility, about 4 million square feet, called the Brooklyn Army Terminal. We're in the close building. That's building A. We're on the south side. We have 4 floors there, totaling about 206,000 square feet, and another 38,000 square feet on the north end, which has 4 companies led by IAVI, which is the International AIDS Vaccination Initiative. We're, light manufacturing rated and positioned generally for biomanufacturing. It's a huge space. It was built in 1918, so it's massive. For those of you that have been there, you know that. And one other feature too, we're right there on the water. So if you take a ferry from Manhattan, you can get right close to the building. That's a nice feature of that facility. They're right, yeah.
Hi, can you hear me? My name is Eva Kramer. I am Vice President for Biotechnology and Scientific Affairs at Downstate Medical School and President of the Downstate Biotech Incubator and Tech at 710. So 2 of the companies that were just on the stage with you are located at Tech at 710. In this picture that you see, Tech at 710 is the picture on the top, and just 1 building away is the Biotech Incubator. Basically, this picture tells you a little bit about both facilities. So The incubator on the left is primarily for biological companies, and you can see a biological lab there. The one on the right is Tech at 710, and it is filled with chemistry hoods. And both of those companies that were just on the stage are located there. And the needs of the different types of companies are quite different. And having a lot of chemistry hoods is very helpful to those companies. Basically, both facilities have both office and lab space. They both have access to using various resources at Downstate Medical School, which is tremendously helpful to them. So, for example, some of our companies have the need for a vivarium, and Downstate has a terrific vivarium and can take care of animals from mice to non-human primates. They also have, for instance, the ability to, for our companies, to use core facilities as well as conference space. They can have a PhD student working in their lab, and they can even sponsor a PhD student for their PhD in a very specialized program we have now where PhDs can work directly with biotech companies. In addition, our companies work with our scientists. They work with clinicians. They're able to do clinical trials at Downstate. So there's a very symbiotic relationship between the university and our companies. Okay.
I don't have slides.
Oh, okay.
Is my mic on? There. Okay. Hi. Hi, I'm Jim Somoza, Managing Director and Partner at Industry City. We are, that is where you are. That's why I don't have a slide, because this is the slide. And we are a 6 million square foot, 35-acre campus. I spoke a little bit this morning about the redevelopment of that campus. And what we do here is a slightly different, I wouldn't even say approach, but we create a community for all industries, and including biotech. And what we do is create a place where people really want to come and work and enjoy being here, being part of the community, making friends, doing collaborations. I describe this project as a giant co-working space for all types of industries, for biotech and for content creators and post-production and designers and artists and makers of all types. And that's what we, kind of specialize in as it relates to biotech here. We do have biotech tenants, companies that some are in this room. And why have they been attracted here is two things. One is the community and the attractiveness to employees for employee retention, employee recruiting, attraction, things like that, proximity to a diverse and talented and educated employee base, but also our spaces lend themselves quite well to that. We don't have built communal biotech space like some other projects, and that's just been a decision that we've decided to go in because so many of the people we've spoken to really wanted it to be sort of bespoke. But what we do to kind of help with that is we have a team of project managers and designers and architects and expediters and all that, so we kind of, and we do this with all industries, by the way, retail and food and beverage and all upper floors, and we kind of take you home, right? And so we help you. One of our fabulous mechanical engineers is sitting right over there who does a lot of the AMA, Arthur Metzler Associates, does a lot of that with us, has done a lot of biotech work. So we work with the experts along with also our own project managers and myself personally, because we have all relationships with the DOB and Department of Health and all that, and so we kind of make sure that our tenants get home, right, and get open in a timely manner without all the cost overruns and all that kind of stuff. So it's slightly different, but what we really try to do is promote, the community that you see. And if any of you had a chance to walk around and see that, you probably see that. And one thing I would like, I know that right after this, we have a sort of little happy hour over here at Sahadi's, one of our great tenants. I mentioned a little bar that we have called Frying Pan, which is in the next building over, which is kind of like our Cheers. And that's really one of the places where our tenants sort of gather at the end of the day. And I say more transactions happen there, more relationships and collaborations happen there than just about any single place on the campus. You'll see it. And so I would like, after that, I'd like to invite you all, if you want, as our guests to the Frying Pan. I'll be over there myself because I usually kind of conduct business off in the corner there at the end of every day. I get more done there than any place. Just tell the bartenders there that you're with this conference and you're on us, and that's it.
I have a nice smile because I get the Cheers reference.
Yeah.
So I'm Satish Rao. I'm the Chief Product Officer of New Lab. New Lab, we support communities of advanced technology startups from around the world. We call them our New Lab members, broadly working in the fields of mobility, energy, and materials. We support them in a variety of ways. The first, typically around programming, investment, and infrastructure. And so the infrastructure part we can focus on today. We started with our original location in Brooklyn, in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. It's an 84,000 square foot warehouse type facility that's home to hardware, 2/3 hardware, 1/3 software type startups working in a variety of themes. We've expanded into a new location in Detroit, Michigan. It's a 270,000 square foot facility, more focused on mobility. And we're currently working with the city to launch a new location back in the Brooklyn Navy Yard focused on materials. With the programming, that's the part side of the shop that I lead. We bring in corporates and governments from around the world who typically represent the first adopters to these great technologies we're developing within the communities, right? So the corporates and governments really represent that market pull if you can get them to transform and work with these great companies that we have within our community. So that's the way we activate and generate value for the companies we work with, and of course investing on top of that. And so while we have been working in the materials space for quite some time with companies within our headquarters as well as our innovation programming, we're new, and our activity is scaling as we speak in the materials theme. So I'm doing just as much listening as I am sharing on the panel today.
Awesome. I think, it's great to hear all the different resources and what all you guys are building or have built and how you've thought about it. I think my first question sort of to everyone here is, how did you think through that strategy as you came up with your approach? I think you shared a bit about the industry city strategy, but diving into that more deeply, how did you think about that? What resources do you really think are important for companies and the ecosystem that you're trying to serve? Yeah, what's your strategy and approach and why?
The historical positioning for BioBat has been biomanufacturing. If you've been over to the Brooklyn Army Terminal, you know it's a massive structure, so it kind of lends itself to large spaces. And we have 10 tenants, and the top 2 have 30,000 square feet each, so it's a big space. That's the historical positioning. Of the 250,000 square feet we have, half has been built out. The other half is going to be built out with some funding from the city that's been allocated. We're taking a hard look right now at what that is going to look like because of the changes from the pandemic and all of the increases in technology, AI, whatever it is, that's changing the nature of biotech firms. We don't know if it's all about super huge spaces anymore. So we're just taking a hard look at that and going to have that review finished up in the summer and then deploy get the design fixed and deploy the funding that we have from the city and build out the other 100,000 square feet or so.
Hi.
Can I say something first? I actually, does everyone know who Eva Kramer is? I just want to make sure, I'm new here, I've been here about 6 or 7 months, and Eva hired me, brought me in to run BioBat. As I look at how this city has developed, in Brooklyn in particular, it wouldn't have happened unless Eva did it. So if you look at what she had as a vision 20 years ago, there was nothing at Downstate Health Sciences, and there was nothing at BioBat. So I just want to make sure everyone knows, and I thank her, not only for hiring me, but also all the really great work. She developed Downstate at 710, she developed BioBat, got all the funding, which well exceeds $100 million, and if she didn't do all of that, it would not have developed like it has. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. So what Tom is alluding to is 20 years ago. And basically at that time, I became the vice president for scientific affairs at Downstate. And when I was looking around about what we should do, I thought, we should work out a way to build an incubator so we can commercialize all the science that's getting developed. So, of course, we had no money. And I went to the president and said, can we build an incubator? And he said, sure, if you want to raise all the money and do all the work, you can do it. But that was really good. And so we went around and we started to look. And as Tom was saying, it was very little other than Audubon at that time. Actually, one of the people I met very early on was Nancy, who was up in Boston at the time. And we started to talk with people where there was biotech going on. And besides Boston at that time and Audubon, out at Stony Brook, there was also some going on. So we went there and looked. And of course, one of the most important things is to say to people, what wouldn't you do again after you did it? So what we did was, we're a nonprofit, and we began raising money. And we raised money from city, state, and federal government. And we used that to build the incubator in phases. So the incubator, which is now 50,000 square feet, was built in 3 phases. And we would build the first one and then fill it and have enough money to go out and raise more money and build the next one and so on. So now we have a 50,000 square foot incubator that's full, and we have tech at 710. The other thing that we really felt was very important was that, we were a nonprofit. We weren't there to make money. We were really there to help young companies succeed. And so because we were able to raise money from the government, we didn't have any debt. And so we were able to keep our rents low, which turns out to be tremendously helpful for these little companies. And then, because we're an educational institution, we became very interested in workforce development projects and have a number of those with Hunter College, of a variety of different places, to help build basically the structure of the workforce that is going to be needed, and to enable many students who are not able to do things to be able to get educated and join this workforce. In addition, we did work with Mary Howard, who is a terrific entrepreneur and had developed e-labs. And we got a grant to have an entrepreneurship program, and she nurtures our companies with a variety of different ways, getting them mentors and setting up networking and webinars and various things like that. So one of the things we discovered, which had never occurred to me, is what happens when the company is successful and it outgrows its space at the incubator. I never really thought beyond just bringing the companies into the incubator. And we realized that we had to have a way for these companies to continue to grow. And that's what started BioBat. And so basically, the International AIDS Vaccine Initiative started off at Downstate. They needed 38,000 square feet, and we went around looking and looked over at the Army Terminal. And the space that Tom is talking about, the 38,000 square feet, is where IAVI moved into initially. And then we raised more money and expanded to the southern end, and Tom came on to be the executive director. So one of the important things is there has to be places where companies can just begin And then if they're successful, continuously grow. So having places like here, for example, and at the Navy Yard and at Biobat are tremendously important if we want to keep our developing little companies staying right here. Okay.
I think for us, our approach and kind of our passion, actually, going back to Chelsea Market and other projects, is community, is the word that I always use. But there are a lot of landlords and developers that use that term because it sounds nice, but we live it, and so that's really what we enjoy doing. We enjoy doing this, but it's about creating community. We saw an opportunity in this project, also given its size, which some days is quite daunting, but to actually create a community where within this area, there's a great community right behind me over here, but it didn't really exist. And so we saw the opportunity to really make a place. And we think that's very important. It was very important for employee attraction and retention and things like that prior to the pandemic. It's even more important now. We've, as a result, we're back up to about 75% of our tenants, employees working here again, which is, I think we've been able to do because of that community. People enjoy coming to work. And that's for a host of industries. Clearly, we're talking about biotech and life sciences today, which I think is important. I think industries also, many like to be together because they're like we're working right now on a nonprofit sort of cluster, because there are nonprofits that share certain challenges in their businesses, just like bioscience and life sciences and biotech. And so there's that opportunity to collaborate and learn. We do industry mixers, and we do things like that, and create moments where people can come and kind of share their experiences, their mistakes, their successes. We learn much more from the mistakes, of course. But that's what we really enjoy doing, and we're very hands-on as a result. We're not the type of developer landlord that we sign a lease and we're like, okay, see you later. We do a lot of support with our tenants. We do a lot of programming. We create moments where that collaboration can take place. This space is a perfect example. This is a co-working. There's more permanent co-working upstairs, but we use this for events like this, all of our events. And so we've tried to create that for industries to kind of work together. And sometimes it happens from industries that you wouldn't even think would work together, but it just happens, right? And it's sharing of ideas and things like that. And that's what kind of gets me out of bed in the morning to enjoy what I do, really. I love building and I love doing all of this, but if you ask me what I really love to do, is I really love to help create connections and community in a way that really kind of changes people's lives. And what we talk about here, and we have a lot of examples of people just by coming, and I don't try not to make this necessarily an IC commercial, by the way, but it's kind of how we think, that we want to do things here that help companies get better just by being here, right? And one of the great examples we have is the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce is one of our tenants here. And I hesitate to use the word tenant. I never really liked that word anyway. I've always been trying to figure out a better one, but with them, I'm going to use the word partner. And that's for all businesses. It's not just people think it's for retail. No, it's for all types of businesses establishing and growing in Brooklyn. And they have just been an incredible partner with us, with some of our biotech tenants, of availability of funds and connections and clients and things like that. And so we're always looking to do those things that kind of make us much more than just a real estate development. And I think that's how we that guides what we do every day.
Nice. Yeah, I would say, the way we build community as well, I think that's the common theme you're hearing here. And so for us, we try to purpose build our communities, or the ones we decide to support, based on a variety of theses that we develop within the themes of mobility, energy, and materials. So what are the things that need to be true in the world that technology can solve within those themes for the health of the planet? And then we go and find those best companies in the world and try to get them to be New Lab members and show them how we can give them value. In some ways, that does involve having them hopefully come to New York and be in our infrastructure and wrap sort of that aspect around them. Other ways, it's how can we find infrastructure around the city or elsewhere for testing and piloting. And then really, like the way the New Lab business model is set up is that we really try to depress our dependency on the revenue from the space so that we don't impart that cost onto the members. In exchange for that, we try to bring in programming through corporate and government to get those dollars to flow through the business and into the community as well. And so that's how we sort of generate this sense of where we can really create essentially longer dwell times in our community, right? So we don't take equity from the companies. We're not motivated from a business perspective for them to flow in and flow out. We want them to stay for as long as they can until they're literally too big to be there anymore. And so that's like our strategy and building community that's sort of together longer. And I think that's important when you're talking about advanced technologies, especially these bio-based sort of technologies that are meant to change industrial processes, redefine how the products that we use every day. They need more time together. And I think that the way we can create those conditions are really the best. But what we found, we have to be honest about that, is that there are some acute challenges when it relates to bio and materials in the business and doing that. There's some things that come up pretty quickly that aren't necessarily true for traditional hardware technologies, and we can talk more about that.
Awesome. Well, we definitely need to talk about that. I just want to pick up on something, Eva, that you're really talking about, and I think it's a super important point, right? The good news is, I think we've really built an ecosystem here in New York, and obviously you're foundational in doing that, so thank you. I mean, I will definitely say from my perspective, personally, when I moved here in 2014, relocating from San Francisco, having come from biotech there at a company called Amyris, when I got here, it was clear there wasn't really an ecosystem around biotechnology or really technology, hard tech, deep tech innovation here in New York. There's a lot of great stuff here, but there really wasn't that ecosystem. I feel like now it's tangible that we've built that and it's growing, and you heard earlier all the reasons why companies really do want to stay here and maintain their presence in New York. And I'll include, nearby New Jersey as part of that. But, there's a great ecosystem. But I think the core question is, how do we continue to scale that? How do we support companies as they do grow? What are their needs, and how are people thinking about that? And, what can governments do to support that? That's a big question, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on how we continue to do that.
So it's a great question. And when I was listening to all those companies speak earlier, it's just fascinating. Some of them have passed through BioBad, and some of them originated at Downstate. So there's kind of a process, and a couple actually have left as they continue to grow. So I guess the question is, how do you keep it going? One aspect of what we do at BioBad is we work very closely. We're actually a joint venture between the SUNY Research Foundation and the New York EDC. So with that in mind, we have direct access to the technologies and the academic research that's coming out of SUNY, and then we try to develop it at Downstate and bring it on. And as part of that also, there are some funding apparatus, I guess, that they have access to because they're associated with the university. For example, Startup New York, if they are associated with a university, they get incredible tax savings. That's a program that every single one of the tenants in BioBad is in because they're associated with SUNY. So that's one way we can keep it nurturing in New York. ESD, so other programs that are available that we can help nurture that and keep them in New York.
Yeah, I mean, what Tom says is really true. Startup New York is a fantastic program. And you're in it once you're accepted for as long as 10 years. So we, at May, really want to stay here for at least 10 years, which is very good for the economy. And what he was alluding to is that they start off small at the incubator, and then we work with them about growing, for example, to BioBat as a place which is also in Startup New York. So if they're at stage 5, 5th year or something, and they move over to BioBat, they can stay in the program. And I think this is crucial in attracting more companies to come here. And one of the things that we're seeing, which is really nice, is we're starting to see companies come from other parts of the country. So you saw Chemofinity came from California and Berkeley, and we have another company just now applying from Yale, and we have some coming from South Carolina. So we are starting to expand and draw people, as Boston too, for that matter, as well as Europe. So we are seeing things growing, and New York is really getting on the map, and companies are coming.
Can I just build on one thing before you guys mentioned community, which I think is really important. So one of the other things we can do is help build the ecosystem. And what I mean by that is not just BioBat's ecosystem, but connected all throughout the city. We've had, I think, every single lab in the city, certainly in Brooklyn, come through BioBat, and I've been to those. And for me, it's not a competition. It's I will recommend the right company to the right spot. It doesn't have to be BioBat. And the thinking there is, the more they come, the more that will come. And the ecosystem supports them, not just with the right space, but then all the programming, everything that we're doing for funding and also education should be all connected with every single incubator and lab throughout the whole city.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you just said, and that is, how do you keep it going? You keep doing what all these fine folks are, doing here, in their careers and lives in this panel, and for us just to keep doing this and more people to do it, because I agree, that, as they say, a rising tide raises all boats, right? And it's really important that this be for the future of this city, because I'm here at IC, and of course I'm a champion in this, but I'm a bigger New York champion actually, and I think it's really important that this industry grows and helps diversify the New York economy. It attracts great talent, it attracts universities, it attracts so many things. But then I'll get even a little bit more macroeconomic real estate dude, housing. And I know that's not what we're all here to talk about, but we have a huge housing problem in New York. It is unaffordable. Our vacancy rates and rentals are below 2%. That means there's no pricing power whatsoever for anybody, and we are going to price ourselves right out of great talent. I know that's not, again, we're the bigger issue, and we're working a lot with the administration, this new administration, mayoral administration that is working on this, but they're getting a lot of pushback, which I get the many parts of that, but as a macro, it's foolish, and we will not be able to continue to, New York is a great place to a point, right? Because at some point, it becomes so unaffordable that you start to see things like have happened in San Francisco, things like that. I'm a big fan of that city, but it's becoming unaffordable. And it's really important, especially for the younger folks just getting out of school, where the heck are they going to live affordably? And how are they getting into you and doing all the great work that they do? So I'll get off my soapbox. I do that every day, but that's my big thing.
Yeah, and I agree with the observation of how the ecosystem has grown, if not exploded, over the years. I mean, if you look at just the industries in New York and the tri-state, the first adopters, the first customers are here, right? So for a lot of the sectors that these bio-based solutions are building towards, and that plus the investment capital and the talent that's interested in living in New York, if the conditions are right, I think that it's all ripe for seeing that ecosystem grow. I think a way to make that, but we have lost just as many companies as well, right, that have left New York after a certain stage.
Yep.
And so why is that? And so I think one thing that we could probably think about is how do we become more sort of intentional about how we network our assets together, so that when a company like a Tomtex graduates from an Indie Bio, ends up at New Lab, then takes up space in a Navy Yard, that's a strategic process that they know when they start the company, not as they go along. And so if you can remove that frictional barrier of having to uproot, move around without having a plan, I think that could create more of a steady state in New York. And at some point, when they do grow to a point, they won't leave, because it is good here at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think housing is a great point. I mean, it's all the pieces of the ecosystem actually totally make a difference, right? And the way I think about it is, without any one piece, even though it's small, it can really stop a company from really putting down roots and trying to grow here. I mean, the second one is really scale up space. And, the difference that I think is different in the Bay Area and probably in Boston too is that there are step out and scale up spaces available, and companies kind of move through them. So you can, someone moves out and then a new company is ready for that scale and can move in, and it's ready-made infrastructure. So I think if we can get that here in the greater New York City area, it would be amazing, because it really allows companies and teams to stay. And I think that is happening, with C16 and Tomtex being here and Helena. I think that's super exciting, but we just need more of those and to keep growing and pushing the whole system up the chain, I would say, so that we have more capabilities that we can serve a growing list of companies. And I think, like you're saying, the blueprint for that, thinking that through and being strategic about it is also important. And getting, working together to get the right government funding to support those things is also a big part of it. I know we're very short on time. I see Nancy standing here. I guess one question I'll just ask, because Satish, you mentioned about some of the challenges for bio and materials companies. Do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So we've had about 3 or 4 stories recently where it was actually good stories. It's a nice problem to have. The companies grew pretty quickly as they were building out and hitting their sort of technical milestones. And so at New Lab, we were basically contorting ourselves to retrofit spaces and add new type of HVAC, and how do you fit benches in here in order to help that company stay longer. And eventually they were able to, it just got too big and had to leave. And so that frictional cost that they hit at certain milestones in their growth was very real. And they're founder-led, and they had great capital behind them, so they figured it out. But in our minds, we're like, wow, if we had like a space that was able to at least absorb some of that, it would have let them grow faster with less capital, right? And so we've seen that happen 3 or 4 times already just in the last 2 years. Fortunately, some of them moved out into the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and the Brooklyn Navy Yard's a great partner in helping them do what we do at a bigger scale as it relates to the space. But more of that, I think we need to be able to somehow figure out in the city.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's about those sort of more specialty equipment, like for labs and for people doing wet science, whether that's chemistry or biology. Having those spaces, is not easy. You can't make them overnight, and they cost money, and that's not really on the timeline or kind of the budget of a startup. Are we out of time?
Does anyone have a question? I know we're standing between you and a drink, so. I just want to, first of all, thank you, all of you, for sharing your stories. But I also want to recognize Eva. I don't think anyone really can understand the situation that she was facing when she first started the Downstate Incubator. I visited her in, 2002, 2003? She was the only one in the city that was thinking about that at the time. And when she says the Audubon was the only thing, she's right. I mean, there was an incubator up at Columbia in Morningside Heights, and that was the only private space in the city, absolutely the only. And when I visited Eva to ask her what was happening in the city, just the incubator was a gleam in her eye. And so to have not 1 but 2 of those incubators built out now, and all of these companies filling them, they're full. I just really want to salute you, Eva, for all the work you did uphill alone all those years. Thank you. And thank all of you for sticking with us all day. I know it's been a long day, but I hope you've learned a lot. And I was just so excited to bring this content to you that I had to put it all in a long day. So hopefully this will be the beginning of following this part of the industry more closely as we move ahead and everybody grows and develops further. So thank you.